atomic gigantification was a sweeping Japan nation when along came a dude with an ultra attitude, a Kamen Rider who's the greatest kicker of Japan. And of all, man, life's too short now, baby, to not talk big now, baby.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Kaiju Conversation. I'm your host Elijah, and joining me as always, my lovely co-host and editor.
Hello, I am Rex.
And we are back at it again for another main episode. It's actually been a while. I want to say this is 3 weeks since we've actually posted an actual, episode.
Damn, something like that.
And, it's kind of weird to think this because we've actually recorded 4 bonus episodes since our last main episode, which was Versus, episode 79. And here we are with episode 80. We're just 20 away from 100, Rex.
Jesus. Where'd all the time go?
It's been crazy. This year is, the podcast, I think, has been part of the issue, but this year has just flown by.
I feel like a broken record each week, but what happened to 2023?
Yeah, no, this year, I will say since October, it started to slow down. But I think that's because
only because we're waiting for -1.
I was going to say that's the only reason is because -1 can't get here quick enough. But speaking of -1, how have you been, Rex?
Good for the most part, trying to dodge as many spoilers for -1 as I can, but try as I might, 1 or 2 keep slipping in every now and again.
See, you and Michael both have told me that you caught spoilers and you found stuff, and it's I never had that problem. I have success. Oh, well, granted,
I click on the trailer once on my on my account that doesn't even watch any Godzilla content. The next day in my recommended feed, what do I see? A spoiler image.
Well, see, here's the thing. I've watched the trailer, but even in my my recommendations is the trailer too. So I'm I just pulled up the Toho movie trailer for it. Mm-hmm. My recommended is now official trailer 2, our bonus episode on the Yamazaki exhibit, G-Fest and whatnot. I'm not getting your stuff that's
bruh
spoilers. But no, I think we can both say that we're excited for -1. It's actually been doing really well at the box office too. So far, yes. I'm pretty sure it's starting to make it level out to a point where it's doing a little bit better than Shin Godzilla, not way better.
Mm-hmm. Bear in mind its first day was a public holiday.
Right. But as our friend G-Man has made it on very clear on our server and on Twitter, in Japan, it's not about your opening weekend. It's not about your opening day. It's about your legs and how far you can go. Because Shin Ultraman opened better than Shin Godzilla. But Shin Ultraman had no legs.
Well, it's not that it had no legs, just didn't have as long of legs.
And so for -1, it has to have the legs of Shin Godzilla or it's screwed.
Mm-hmm. At least
now, yes. Now, granted, I think it's a pretty easy thing to figure out that -1 will do better internationally than Shin Godzilla. I think that's a given.
What a shocker. The only way it could do worse is if it absolutely bombs.
Right. Which I don't see that happening. Because I think I believe it would have more marketing than Shin Godzilla did, because that was an event showing, not a wide release showing. So maybe -1. Well, so either way, I think -1's guaranteed to do well.
Mm-hmm. But alas, we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose.
We will. So, I mean, outside of, waiting for -1 and whatnot,
waiting for
what
peak.
else is going on? How's your life? What's popping?
Not much. Just it's the end of the year. It's a crazy time.
Yeah. This is true.
Things in my personal life finally chilling out a bit, which is nice to get a little break from things,
Yeah. I've kind of getting to that point too, where it's like a lot of the things I'm trying to get done are getting done. So I'm hoping that I can, by the end of the year, I'm hoping that I've done all of my currently like in production projects and whatnot and whatnot.
Right. But yeah, outside of that, have you seen any Tokusatsu in the past?
So it's funny you bring that up, because in between all of my working and whatnot and cleaning the house and whatnot, did I bring up that I saw Godzilla 2000 in theaters?
Have
I talked about that?
I don't think
I
so.
don't think so. So I did. I got to see Godzilla 2000 in theaters November 1st with the Fathom screening.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first Millennium Era / Heisei, if you want to be technical, Godzilla movie in theaters. That was pretty cool. It was the Japanese version.
Didn't you see Against Godzilla in theaters?
Oh, that's right. Never mind. It's my third Heisei and Millennium film. Yeah, it's my third. So, unfortunately, it was the Japanese version. So, I haven't seen that version a lot, but now I understand how that version is not that good. The final fight is atrocious, and the sound design is just not there at all, period.
I don't know, I like the Japanese version.
Have you seen the US version?
I mean, the US version was the only one I had access to for a long time.
I wasn't sure how the distribution in Australia worked, so I wasn't sure if you even got the US version or if it was the Japanese one.
I'm pretty sure it was only the US version that's been distributed here.
Really? Who
Yeah.
who did that distribution?
Madman. It's just the US cut is like the only one on the DVD from them.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know why it's like the only Millennium film to not have the Japanese cut on it.
I wonder if it was a sub-license through Sony and that's why.
Not a clue.
But I got to see it. Even though the Japanese version is not nearly up to par sound design-wise with the US version.
Honestly, the only thing that actively bugs me about the Japanese version is like some of the color grading.
See, the print they used was actually pretty dark. It was a pretty dark print.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the issue with the Japanese cut of 2000, is that it's really dark. Like, there's some shots with Godzilla, like, when he's first, like, arriving for the final battle, there's, like, a couple shots where he just straight up blends into the background. It's that dark.
I don't think that's the case on the Blu-ray from Sony. I don't think. Well, because, Japanese films typically do have an issue with the blacks in the prints.
Right.
Typically, they're a lot more intense than they really should be.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, like, from what I have understood, whenever, like, companies have acquired Japanese films and they do color grading, the first thing they do is decrease the blacks, because it's so intense they have to get rid of that before they do anything else. So that was an issue. The subtitles were dub titles. Because on the Sony Blu-ray, I'm 99% sure it's Organizer G1. Because that's what the Japanese script is, Organizer G1.
Yeah.
But the English version, the the dub said Regenerator G1. The subtitles said Regenerator G1, but in the Japanese version, it's very clear they're saying Organizer G1.
Yeah.
And it's weird to hear them like say Organizer G1 and read Regenerator G1. It's like, something's not right about that. Something doesn't add up.
Right.
So that was an issue. But I got a really good seat. I enjoyed it. I had a good conversation with somebody afterwards, talking about kaiju movie releases, and he had seen the movie at the same theater, at the same seat 23 years ago. So that was really cool. We chatted for like an hour and a half. It was a great conversation. Like that was a lot of fun. And we've met before. Like we ran into each other at the Yuzo, the Biggest Battle in Tokyo premiere. We've interacted a little bit at G-Fest, not a lot, just a little bit. And then I think we were in the same theater for Tokyo SOS and Against Mechagodzilla. I think we both showed up. We talked about going to the same theater for -1, but I'm going to a different theater because I want to see it in IMAX and not Dolby. So, that's neither here nor there. But, I had a lot of fun with it. So the films I've seen in theaters now from Godzilla is I've seen Godzilla 54, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Ebirah, Horror of the Deep, Destroy All Monsters, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, Godzilla vs. Megalon, Terror of Mechagodzilla. But outside of that, I got Garo Volume 1.
Yes.
Now, for anybody who doesn't know, Rex, can you give a brief rundown of what Garo is?
So Garo is like a midnight tokusatsu series, essentially one geared towards more adult audiences, and essentially about horrors. These creatures, demon beasts called horrors, appear, and there's a knight, Garo, who has to vanquish these horrors, and he has the ability to transform into an armored knight. And so Garo is an incredible series that has had some of its earlier shows, as well as one of its movies and two specials actually, distributed by Kraken Releasing, whom had also done Godzilla 1984 and some of the Showa movies as well, around like 2014-ish.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is, with that, is not only is Kraken not in business at the moment, but
they're gone.
But the first volume of the first Garo show is a little hard to obtain and a little expensive. Because
the way I understand it, when they released Garo Volume 1, they were testing the waters to see how well it would do, and it didn't sell well at all. But that's also because there was no marketing for it. Nobody knows it exists. So they released Garo, and it bombed. So with what licenses they did have, they just dumped it all and stopped producing Garo Volume 1 because that was the one that, was in print long before the rest. Mm-hmm. So what happened is that became a very limited edition. It sold out quickly. And because nobody could acquire the first volume, nobody would buy any of the other Garo's things. It's like, it was a disaster. Like, whoever created this business practice, who are you? That's not how you do it. But what ended up happening is Garo Volume 1 has become impossible to get for cheaper than $70. But I have people who I know who know people and have warehouses. And stuff comes in, stuff comes out, stuff is sold, stuff is bought. Collections come in, collections come out. And if I'm patient enough, 9 times out of 10, I can get Tokusatsu releases for like really good prices.
Mm-hmm.
My quote for Gunhead is $9 when it comes in. Now, for Big Bad Beetleborgs and VR Troopers, that's a different story because they want 100 a pop per disc release. And so it's basically the prices of what it is everywhere else. So I'm kind of screwed on getting Beetleborgs. I already got I got VR Troopers, but I didn't get all of Beetleborgs, so I'm kind of screwed. But Garo somehow came in, and I ended up paying $18.43, which is like right below MSRP.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't even have to pay MSRP for it. And like 3 years ago, Sentai Filmworks, the parent company of Kraken, was doing a Black Friday sale, and they were selling all the Garo releases for, I kid you not, $3 a pop.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got the TV specials for $1.50 each.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, they were trying to get rid of them. Like, Garo was not selling. Now, I'm pretty sure all of Garo has officially went out of print and it's no longer on the Sentai website. Kraken is officially a dead company. I think it's still, some of them are on Crunchyroll, but for the most part, they're officially like done. But I got to complete my Garo collection. So once I finish Ultraman 80, which I'm hoping I might start in like 24 hours or 48 hours from now, like to finish that up, because I think I only have like 20 episodes left. I'm going to jump into Garo, watch Garo, the TV special and the movie, and then watch the second series of Garo and that TV special.
I mean, to be fair, that special is set during midway through the event of one of the last episodes of Garo.
Well, it's fine. It's fine. I'll still watch it that way. Like, that's how I'm going to do it.
Like, I think it's like, I want to say it was released between sometime around during Makai Senki's run, which is the second show's. Mm-hmm. But, like, it's literally set during the events of the first Garo, right before the finale.
So, I mean, I'm excited either way. The first
Garo's peak.
Well, because throughout this podcast, you've talked about Garo like nonstop.
Yes, because it's good, and I'm currently rewatching it.
So I'm kind of excited. Like, you've really set the bar high, and it's Keita Amamiya, and I mean, Zeiram is in Hekaida, Mechanical Violator Hekaida is really good. So I'm excited. I hopefully maybe by next recording I can say that I've watched some, but I don't know.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with just temporarily putting a halt on Ultraman 80 like you already have.
No, yeah. I got to get through 80. I got to. Like, I gotta end the Showa era Ultraman. I gotta get through it.
Trust me, it's worth it for Garo.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'll watch 80, and then I'll watch 2 series of Garo, 2 TV specials, and a movie, and then I'm going to watch Ultraman Tiga, which is apparently really good, and everything will be fine, right?
I should watch Tiga. I should try that again.
But you
finish Max. I need to finish Max. I keep forgetting.
You and I should watch Tiga, like,
sure.
in unison together. There we go. That's how we'll get through Tiga. I started Tiga 7 years ago, and I watched 2 minutes of it and said, no, this looks awful, and I shut it off.
That's
like,
funny.
That's how far that went. I had just finished Ultra 7. I was like, man, that was really good. And then I started Ultraman Tiga like the day of finishing Ultra 7. I watched 2 minutes of it. I was like, this does not look at all like what I want to watch. I'm done.
Damn.
And I shut it off.
That's funny.
And then Mill Creek eventually started releasing stuff, so I started watching it again. And, I started with Return of Ultraman, then I did Ace, then Taro, then Leo, and now I'm on 80.
And now you've seen the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, I've seen Taro. God, Taro's such an awful show.
See, I have no opinion of it because I haven't seen it.
Eventually, I hope we can cover Ultraman like series on this show. I can't wait to talk about Taro because it's going to be Taro hate every episode. I'll probably have to find a way to like sit down and watch that show again. And then Leo is probably going to be difficult after the last 20 episodes.
Oh boy.
So, but I mean, outside of that, like talking about Tokusatsu, I've actually watched. So I've watched a lot since our last main episode recording. Because it's been about a month since we recorded, it's been over a month. It's been a month and a week since we last recorded an episode of the main episodes.
Yeah, but we did kind of talk about at least a few of the things, if I remember right, in a Halloween bonus.
Which probably isn't out yet. I don't know. I don't remember how our schedule lines up, but there is a bonus episode that is either out or coming out that has us talking about a movie that is not on brand and a like segment where we just talk about all of the stuff we've watched. So since then, I believe these are what I've watched. Zombie Ass, Toilet of the Dead, Kanochi, Lady Ninja, Origami, the Raging God of Battle, which is not technically Tokusatsu or Kaiju, but it is a Ryuei Kitamura film, so I wanted to bring it up. And then Tormented 3D.
Well, as for me, following said recording, I've watched Origami with you by coincidence, The Grudge Free, and I also rewatched both Godzilla Final Wars, did some, watched the Godzilla Fest stuff, and last but certainly not least, finally completed the Always Sunset on 3rd Street trilogy.
So now you are basically set up to go see Godzilla -1 because you've seen all but like 3 of his films that are live action.
Yeah, pretty much. I would like to hopefully watch Juvenile as well, though. Hopefully, but we'll see.
Yeah, because you've got Juvenile, you've got Ballad, and then you've got Destiny.
And Field, the man they call Pirate.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting that movie.
I think it is his least popular movie, actually. So that's not too.
I don't know. I think Destiny is.
I don't know.
I've just talked about Destiny more than Fueled.
I've seen more images and clips from Destiny, and by that
I've heard more about Fueled.
A clip.
I don't know.
Sakura Ando's in it.
But that's awesome. So, okay. How was The Grudge 3? Because I did just buy that, but I still have to sit through The Grudge 2 before I can watch The Grudge 3.
Well, it is. It's, you can tell it's Shimizu had no involvement. You can really tell. It's not good. It's not good, and I think I'm already starting to forget most of the film, to be honest. So that's a good sign. It is a little funny in one or two scenes, particularly the ending. The very, very bad ending. And yeah, about the only other thing I remember from it is Amanda from the Saw movies is in it.
Oh,
that's about most of what I remember.
And I know you and I have talked off cast, but you liked Always Sunset 64, but it did have some story issues.
Yeah, so it's about a 2-hour, 20-minute movie. The first 2 hours, pretty much almost completely amazing. Like we're second best Yamazaki movie for me, level. And then the last 20 minutes of Chigawa, Hidetake Yoshioka's character, his story happens. And yeah, that really soured the movie. A lot. Because it is a terrible ending for it. Oh, I hate that last 20 minutes of his character story. I hate that. He's just such a dick to Junosuke. All because his father was a dick to him.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, I would hope one day we get to cover those because Godzilla and Takashi Yamazaki.
They're also just great movies.
But maybe, I mean, we'll see. They'll definitely be bonuses if we do cover them.
Yeah, you need to see how funny Shinichi Tsutsumi is. He's so great, and you don't know how funny of an actor he is.
That's fair. Well, I mean, we're about 40 minutes in here. So, are you ready to transition into our main topic?
Sure.
Okay. You might have to edit this part out, but I forgot what we're talking about.
Oh, well, conveniently for you, I actually remember.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm actually prepared.
Okay. Well, I'm prepared.
You're just failing, honestly. But yes, today, as viewers have already realized, we will be covering 1966's Godzilla film.
You only live twice.
I don't think Godzilla's in James Bond.
I thought it was a James Bond movie.
Well, there's James Bond elements, but you know, there's a big lizard in the movie.
I've actually never watched the James Bond movie. Is that a problem?
Or have I, actually?
Okay, good. We're in the same boat. Cool. We're fine.
I would love... I've had, Dr. No, the very first James Bond film, on my Prime Video, watch list for ages, but I've never gotten around to it.
I'll be honest, I'm actually more interested in the Japanese knockoff movies than the actual franchise.
That is the most Elijah thing you could have possibly said.
That's the quote for the day. I'm actually more interested in the Japanese knockoffs than the legitimate movies.
Yeah, Mr. Zombie Month would be.
So, what are we covering, Rex?
We are covering 1966's Ebirah, Horror of the Deep, also known as Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, also known as Gojira, Ebirah, Mosura, Nankai no Daiketo.
Which translates to Godzilla, Ebirah, Mothra, Big Duel in the South Seas.
Yes.
Which, okay, so first, I, for some reason, have had issues with the two titles of this movie. The original Japanese version, when you translate it and localize it, I thought it was Godzilla, Mothra, Ebirah, Big Duel,
Yeah, I always remember it as being Godzilla,
so that
Mothra.
Threw me off. And then I have so the issue with Ebirah, Horror of the Deep, is it has a similar title set up to Yongari, Monster from the Deep. So in my head, and there's moments while I was researching, I was writing Ebirah, Horror from the Deep, and I'm like, no, it's of the Ebirah, Horror of the Deep. So for some reason, this movie, outside of the title Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, I have struggled with just remembering this title for some reason. And it's funny.
Damn. I mean, for me, I would say it's a more common title in my country, so I'm kind of used to calling it Ebirah, Horror of the Deep. I mean, hell, in my country, it's been marketed as Godzilla, Ebirah, Horror of the Deep.
I grew up with this movie. This was one of my first 10 Godzilla movies.
Oh, same. This was either my second or third film. Because, my first... I want to say I watched them all in one night. My first 3G films were Final Wars. That was the first one I watched. And then it was either Ebirah or Gigan that I watched next. I don't remember which order I watched them in.
Well, see, for me, it was
one or the other.
Terror of Mechagodzilla, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and then I want to say it was Godzilla, Son of Godzilla, and then I think it was Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, and then Godzilla King of the Monsters. So this was probably this was the fifth film probably I'd watched. Because I mean, I borrowed my aunt's VHS tapes, as I've said in the past, for other films, and just when I was talking about the introduction to my, dive into the world of Kaiju and Tokusatsu. But it was always marketed as Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. It had that title card, that title sequence. It had the AIP cut. It had the AIP dub, or it wasn't AIP. It was Walter Reed / Film Ventures International, or Film Ventures Entertainment.
Yeah, see, my old DVD when I was growing up was a bootleg, so I don't remember what cut that was. I know it was dubbed. I just don't remember if it was the international dub or if it was the Walter Reed dub.
See, so the international dub. So that's the cut I watched. I used the Kraken releasing Blu-ray. So for me, it's kind of weird because it's not the dub I grew up with, and it's not the title card I grew up with. So it sounded really weird. I was used to more annoying voices. And I honestly, it's been a long time since I've watched Ebirah. So for me, this was kind of weird, hearing the voices.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in a few years either. It's been
well, actually, I should correct myself. I saw this. Let's see. I saw this last year. I watched Ebirah at G-Fest last year in theaters, but it was the Japanese version, so I didn't hear the dubbed voices. But before that, it had been 5 years since I had seen it. Because I haven't done a Godzilla marathon. I mean, I may have done one in 2019, maybe. So it might have been 3 years before last year. But I mean, if I did a Godzilla marathon in 2019, I can tell you right now, I was watching them and just binging them. Just boom, watch it, done. Boom, next one. Not even just embracing the Godzilla stuff. And honestly, I don't think I even did that because I did not rewatch the anime Godzilla movies. I think I've seen Planet of the Monsters twice. Maybe. I don't even think that's true. I think I've only watched them once. So this was kind of a fresh viewing for me, at least.
Yeah. Oh, it's been ages for me since I've seen this one.
So do we want to dive into the pre-production for this film? So, I mean, I'll start off here and we'll kind of bounce off of each other. Everybody knows this. Originally, the film was titled Operation Robinson Crusoe, King Kong versus Ebirah. Toho had the rights to King Kong for 5 years after licensing him from RKO Pictures in 1962. So they would have had him up until 1967. Fun fact, we're not talking about Destroy All Monsters here, but there is this version of that script that had King Kong in the film, but because of the rights lapsing, he couldn't appear.
Really? Huh.
I don't remember where I heard
I've never heard that one before, actually. I know Ebirah apparently was in an early draft of Destroy All Monsters.
I'm pretty sure King Kong was, Sanda and Gyra were at one point, Ebirah was.
Yeah, I know that they changed that it took them the monster roster for that movie basically.
It was kind of like Final Wars, but not nearly as because Final Wars, they literally had the Bandais just on a table. And I guarantee you there's probably 50 versions of that film that were thought up in the planning process.
I mean you have probably, but you have your book, the Godzilla Final Wars completion book, actually tells you which monsters were in each actual draft of the script.
Which is a great book.
Yeah. I want it. Gimme.
I'll think about it. So Sekizawa was the one. So I've heard. Okay. There's two versions of this story. I'll tell one, and then if you know the other, I'll let you tell it. If not, I'll say it. So Sekizawa was doing the script for Operation Robinson Crusoe. And it was intended to be a co-production with Rankin Bass. When the script was done, because Rankin Bass was doing the King Kong show, co-produced with Toei at the time, Rankin Bass saw the script. They liked it. It worked. They actually had produced they had produced the Ebirah suit. They had Mothra, which, depending on the story, appears in that script or does not. More than likely, she did not. Or he didn't. In the dub, they say it's he. And I think if you go off of...
Mothra he.
Yes. Well, I'm pretty sure they even, like, if you go canonically, Mothra 64 was a she. The child was a he. That he became the he in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, and then that he would become full-grown Mothra and appear in Ebirah.
I think
so. I think it does
only be in the dub. I think.
I don't remember.
I'm like thinking back, and I could be misremembering this as well, but I swear that's only like a thing in like the dub.
I don't remember. I don't. I just know that based off of the dubs, canonically, it still works.
I don't think there's even like, I don't think the Japanese version's really like, I don't think there was ever any intention for like either of the twin Mothra lavas to be specifically male or female. I don't think.
I always took it as one was male, one was female.
Right,
that's kind of how I
think that only really actually is like a legitimate thing in Tokyo SOS, I think.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember.
I know Tokyo SOS just actually has straight up like sexual dimorphism in the design slightly.
Okay. So Operation Robinson Crusoe, it's basically the same story as we did get for Sea Monster, but I mean, Mothra was either in it or wasn't in it. We don't know. And then there were some slight changes. Toho was kind of done with the Tsuburaya Honda duo. I mean, Tsuburaya and Honda had been doing this now for 12. This would have been 12 years.
Jesus, yeah.
And they did Gargantuas together, so they were on their 12th year. So like they had been doing this for a while, and it was very expensive, all of their films. Toho kind of wanted to lean back on the budget because at this point it was getting harder to finance the stuff.
Right.
After 1966, I mean, you see in 67 a duo production with King Kong Escapes and Son of Godzilla, but both were at a very like lower cost than the others. Both were reduced prices. But after that, it was just one Tokusatsu, one kaiju movie a year outside of 69, which had Godzilla's Revenge and Latitude Zero. But even then, Godzilla's Revenge was a very cheaply made film.
Right. I mean, they intended on ending the Godzilla series anyways with, Destroyer Monsters in 68. So
this was the beginning of the planned end for Godzilla and Toho and the whole Daikaiju Ega thing.
Right. I mean, bear in mind, it's also important to mention that this year, 1966, was also the start of the first monster boom in Japan as well.
Yes, because in this year, you had Toei produce the Magic Serpent.
Right. Daiei was producing Gamera vs. Barugon, as well as all three Daimajin films.
Toei also, I'm trying to remember, I want to say they were developing Akage Ninja Red Shadow, which it was right after Magic Serpent because they reused some of the same props. That had kaiju in it, and then Tsuburaya Productions was officially working on
Ultra Q.
Was it Ultra Q and Kaiju Busca?
Yeah, I mean Ultra Q premiered in January of 1966, and then Ultraman started in July. Yeah. And
then you had P Productions, right? They're the ones that did Space Giants.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, Space Giants are Ambassador Magma.
Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to think. Shochiku didn't do anything yet. Nikatsu wasn't in it. I want to say that's it. But this was the beginning, and then of course 67, whole nother ball game. Like that was when every company in Japan was producing Kaiju Eiga. I have a list of all the 60 stuff. Yeah, you had Ultra Q, Magic Serpent, Daimajin, Gamera versus Barugan, Return of Daimajin, Ambassador Magma, Ultraman, The War of the Gargantuas, Return of Daimajin, Kaiju Buska, Daimajin Strikes Back, and Ebirah Horror of the Deep. So Red Shadow had not started production yet. So that's what was going on at the time, which is still quite a lot considering before, like the prior year, 1965, only saw Frankenstein versus Baragon, Gamera the Giant Monster, and Invasion of Astro Monster. So for, Kaiju Eiga, this was the beginning of a turn, but it was also the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
If for modern terms, look at Marvel was producing 3 films a year. Now they're doing 2.
Are they?
I think. Are they? No, actually, I think it's still 3, but the box office returns are
well.
critically and financially they are.
You're
not.
also going to remember Marvel is also doing like how many TV shows as well too.
But they've even announced they're lowering production on that because it's just not financially viable. Disney Plus, the numbers came back.
They were like losing like $300 million or something.
$350 million. Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus.
But that's not neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But we were beginning to get that oversaturation, right?
Right.
People could live with it in 66. It worked in 67. 68, it was slowing down. 69, it was really starting to, have a problem. 70, it crashed. 71 was picking up the pieces and moving slower. 72, it was slow, and it just was, slow up until about 75, and then it basically died pretty much until 80, and then after 80, it started sputtering again. And just really, it hasn't come back to that point.
No,
at least on a major studio level. Nowadays, there's a lot being produced, but it's all on a smaller scale.
Right.
But Toho wanted to bring in one of their cheaper their B movie director, Jun Fukuda, and by this point, Tsuburaya was, head deep in working on establishing his production company, Tsuburaya Productions, and working very hands-on on Ultra Q and Kaiju Buska and Ultraman. So he was absent, but Rankin Bass wanted Toho to put Honda and Tsuburaya in charge of it.
Right.
And Toho said no. And because of that back and forth feud, the project just went under. But Toho had already made the sets. They had already cast most of the people. They had already had a script. They had the suits made. They had the new King Kong suit made, which would later appear in King Kong Escapes, of course. So they were like, we've spent all this money. What are we going to do? And they had the 65 Godzilla suit still laying around. They had the 64 Mothra puppet laying around. And so Sekizawa rewrote the scripts and included Godzilla instead of King Kong. And then Fukuda was approached April 21st of 1966, and production started and ended up the film released on December 17th of 1966.
Yeah. Which must have been a pretty short production time span, all things considered.
Right. Because so when Fukuda came on, the Godzilla script was already done because he didn't even know about the King Kong script.
Right. And I mean, I want to say, according to like John LeMay's book, the first draft screenplay is dated to about July 13th of 1966.
Right.
And special effects filming, I know, ended less than a month before the film came out, with it being completed around like November 21st, according to the date on some photos.
So yeah, that means they pretty much had a week to edit the film.
Yeah, pretty much. Couple weeks, yeah. Not very long at all.
So I also know that according to what Fukuda said, he had to like cut scenes frequently.
Yeah. It sounds like Toho had a very like particular runtime they wanted the film to be, and were pretty strict on keeping it around that time. At least that's what
I know.
It makes it sound like.
Yeah, because I think Sekazawa's draft for the King Kong one, I think that it was like 119
pages.
Which, if you understand screenplays, that's roughly 2 hours and like 2 minutes.
Right.
That's actually pretty long. That's right. Pretty long. But that's a draft, right? So stuff is going to be reworked and stuff's going to be cut for budgetary and scheduling restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
But they cut.
It's possible that also I could be. I'm making this up. I'm speculating this, but it's possible that the way Japanese screenplays are formatted, and because of like Japanese writing, it could also maybe cause a discrepancy there in that sort of like rule of thumb with like English screenplays. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. I'd have to, because I have the Shin Godzilla screenplay. I should go and see how many.
I mean, with Shin Godzilla, like everyone involved in that film, like early on, basically when they read the script, that was a 3-hour script. That film script is a 3-hour script that Anna's like, we're gonna make it. It's a 3-hour script, but trust me, we're gonna make it 2 hours. And the producers were all worried about that. Like, I'm not kidding. That there's a fair few quotes about that. That's why they had to do like a drama in pre-production where they had like a voice cast and storyboards just to prove it.
Well, I'll have to go and look and see how many pages that is just to kind of
let me
get
know.
an idea. But the final film, I want to say it's an hour and 27 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's roughly that's 87 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Just shy of 90. Which, that's still a decent, by the 70s, the Godzilla films were running about 75 to 80 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's still not the shortest, but that's still a pretty short runtime, all things considered. Like,
yeah, most of the previous films were pretty much like a solid 90 minutes, I want to say.
Right, 90 to about 100.
Except maybe Raids Again, I think. Raids Again, like 80 minutes.
Raids Again also suffered from that rushed production, too.
Right, yeah.
And it's funny you bring up Raids Again because Honda, up until this point, the only kaiju film that Honda did not work on was Raids Again, if I'm remembering correctly. I think he worked on every other kaiju film up until 66 besides Raids Again.
Mm. And from the Godzilla series, this the only other Godzilla film to not have had composer Akira Ifukube was Raids Again.
Mm-hmm.
And then this film was the next one, which both featured scores from Masaru Sato.
Right. Which I'm just going to say this one's way more memorable than his Raids Again one.
See, I like the main theme of Raids Again.
The da 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 da. That one?
Yeah. The main theme is good.
I don't know. I think Ebirah's
score is interesting. not my favorite Godzilla score. I think it's a bit. I feel like at a couple points it feels really strange for a Godzilla film.
Yeah,
but I
and
love it overall.
I do. Once we get to like really talking about a score, I want to talk about some of his other works that are non-kaiju that I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll talk about that a little later. So Ebirah, the other story is Rankin Bass wrote the King Kong Ebirah script. The other story is an American wrote that script and pitched it to Toho. It included Mothra. Toho liked it, and then they had the issue between Honda Tsuburaya and Fukuda Arikawa, which led to them just not doing it, Toho taking the script and then just doing their own thing with it. The only issue with that is the source says Mothra was included, but why, like, the question would be, why would a foreign producer include a Toho kaiju?
I mean, would they not legally have to, if it was an American script or idea, would they not have to credit the American who came up with the story as well?
This is true. So, actually, maybe not, because maybe it could be like a One Cut of the Dead thing where it was like the original concept and not inspired by or adapted by.
John Beck moment.
I mean, that's knowing that can happen is kind of interesting now, and kind of puts a whole new play on what you could do with credits and whatnot. I mean, you kind of realize how messed up things can be.
That'd be interesting if true, but I just don't know if I believe it.
Yeah, see, that one I struggled to believe. I mean, I believe the other one, but that one I really don't believe.
Yeah.
But that being said, there is like, in the 60s, Toho did have somebody write from America a version of Batman Meets Godzilla, and then Sekizawa did one.
Right. Which was around the same time-ish as this.
Right. So I feel like there might be a little bit of a
like, I wouldn't
possibility.
say it's entirely out of the realm of possibility, especially given, how long it's been. Information like that kind of does get lost,
right,
over time.
And then I don't remember who was writing it, but there was a script dated for a kaiju movie from 1966 that would apparently have included Godzilla, but that script eventually morphed into Space Amoeba.
I've heard that there's no, from what I was reading, there's no version of that script that actually does feature Godzilla.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's what I've read. But many have sort of attributed that to have, or suggested that it could have been envisioned early on. I mean, I want to say this was this around the time that there were considerations for a Godzilla TV show?
I think so. No, that was 67.
67? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
See, as we have gotten into this time period, the amount of Godzilla concepts like increase exponentially. I mean, we haven't really covered a lot of the scrapped Godzilla movies. I'd like to eventually one day. Because like there's a handful from the 50s, a few from the early 60s and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But like starting this year, like 66 up until like the early 80s, there's like an idea for each year for a Godzilla movie.
Right. And a couple TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
Like Zone Fighters.
Right. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like some people have suggested that either 66 would have been an off year for Godzilla, or they had something envisioned but nothing concrete, and then the Robinson Crusoe script just fell into Godzilla.
Depends, I guess. Isn't really any concrete confirmation on either theory, I guess, at the moment, and probably never will be, to be honest.
Yeah. We are so far removed from that time period and the people who were around at that point.
The only way is if there's like some obscure like Japanese source that hasn't been translated yet. Maybe. That's right. That's like the only way. So Ebirah completion book, hear me out here. But yeah, was there anything else really you had on pre-production? No.
I mean, that's really all I had. Surprisingly, the amount of information on this film is not a lot.
Rather limited, all things considered, from at least from my research as well.
I will say, I feel like this film, in at least the Godzilla fandom, has been greatly ignored the influences, which, I mean, we'll talk about when we talk about the movie, of course. Because the influences this film has in understanding the context of why it is the way it is makes it a little, I mean, you can understand it a little bit more because this film is straight up a comedy.
Yeah.
Like, this is not the sci-fi space opera Astro Monster was, or the sci-fi comedy adventure that Ghidorah was, and it's not the sci-fi fantasy that Mothra was, or the satire that King Kong Versus was. This is a comedy. It's meant to be a parody comedy film, which nobody talks about.
Yeah, but nobody talks about a lot of things when it comes to this franchise, I'm going to be honest.
I mean, this is true. But like, as we, have been breaking down and talking about each Godzilla movie, understanding the time period and the intentions and other kaiju content and other tokusatsu and the just content being made at the time suddenly puts these films into a lot more interesting light. I mean, GMK, I've talked about GMK on the Autistic Lizard Productions podcast, where I basically broke down how it's basically a proto-J horror movie. And it makes sense because Kaneko did start off in the late 90s doing, he didn't start, but he was doing J-horror in the late 90s when the J-horror boom happened, and GMK is shot like a Japanese horror movie until the final act. So, I haven't seen the films that this movie is as parodying.
Yeah.
But reading about it and at least having an idea of what it is, it suddenly makes a lot more sense why there's certain things going on in it. So, with that being said, if you're ready, Rex, I say we jump into this movie.
Alrighty.
I'm going to let you start us off here. So, title sequence, I guess.
Yeah, title sequence. Following our credits, we learned that people, specifically the brother of one of our main characters, Ryota, are being lost in the South Seas, and the Japanese police, are doing nothing. They have no legislation in the area, unfortunately.
Which I think part of it too is they established that they found wreckage of the boat, and because they did,
right, no one believes that the brother Yata, whose name is Yata, is alive.
Right, and the only person that's saying Yata's alive is Ryota, a Shinto priest.
And yeah, the psychic that he consulted.
Right, and so, people are like, nah, that's just superstition, we're not going to listen to that.
Right. Eventually, after getting nowhere with the police and the media, he goes to a dance competition that is offering a prize of a yacht. Unfortunately, he's too late and can't join in, but two other guys who were there, he ends up having a bit of a chat to, and and convinces them to show him around some nearby yachts for some reason.
Which is kind of weird. It's like, I wouldn't show somebody some yachts that I just met,
and that I don't own, and I'm gonna trespass on the yachts.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like they're literally like everything they're doing is wrong. Like they're college students, but they're still being really, really, really stupid for college students.
Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of kind of wishy-washy writing in this movie where it's like these characters. I don't know why you make these decisions, but whatever.
The characters in this definitely are not the smartest. Besides one of them. One of them's like obviously an intelligent human being and he's the best.
Right. But even he makes some questionable decisions here and there.
Yeah. And the whole like ignoring who he is kind of
a bit odd.
And yeah.
But yeah, following this, they go to a dock and start just going on a board on a random yacht. And while they're exploring the area, a guy comes out with a rifle. It's Akira Takarada, the man, the myth, the legend.
Which I love. So his entrance, the college students, the three of them, go down into the boat, turn on a light, and then Takarada just rolls out of here with a gun. And he's like, "Who are you? What are you doing?"
You're trespassing on this property.
Because in the dub, he says trespassing, breaking and entering.
Yeah, no, he says that in the sub as well.
Okay, and there's one more he lists off, and he's like, "You guys are breaking the law pretty, like, you're doing a lot wrong."
Yeah.
And it's like, man, like, just wow. His intro is just insane.
Yeah. Eventually, he just lets him stay the night on board.
Yeah.
Which is a bizarre decision.
And he says they can stay till the morning, but it's like they never asked to even stay the night.
Yeah.
They're just supposed to be looking. Why are they staying the night?
Yeah, did they not intend on going home?
Do they not have things they need to do?
Yeah. Regardless, they stay the night. But when Takarada wakes up, he finds not only is his gun missing, but they're sailing.
Yeah. And Rota broke the gun?
Yeah.
Part of me thinks that he did that to be on purpose, just to like make sure he didn't have a gun. But the dialogue,
I think some of the dialogue, if I remember right, the dialogue suggests that it was like a toy gun or something. So like a fake.
No, Rota says that he thought it was a toy gun, but I don't know. The dub at least suggests that he thought it was a toy and it broke, but Takarada's character, Yoshimura, makes it very clear it's not a toy.
I mean, I sort of interpreted it as like perhaps it like was a toy. He was just using it to like. He didn't have an actual gun, but he was using it like to threaten
Fear
people.
factor.
Yeah, fear factor, exactly. And I mean, he is meant to be a heroic-ish character, at least later on. But I suppose it doesn't really matter. Either way, it's broken.
It's broken. And they go up onto the deck of the ship.
Yeah.
Which everybody's like, let's turn back. And Rota's like, no, this is a gift of the gods. We're going to sail.
Yeah. And just because Takarada doesn't know how to or anyone else know how to drive a boat, they're just like, okay, fine.
Is it drive a boat? I think it's sail a boat.
Yes. Sail, steer. Couldn't think of a word. Brain was malfunctioning, okay?
But no, he is so ignorant. Rota's such an ignorant character.
Yeah.
Like, he is such an obnoxious character throughout the story. It's like, how are these people still alive? I mean, I guess it follows.
Why is Takarada so nonchalant about this?
Yes! Like, if I was him, I would have already thrown him off the ship.
Bro, the type of character Takarada is, like, He would have just thrown him off the ship or at least been threatening him to do that. And I mean, like, he does try and scheme a little later, hey, we need to get off here. With, like, the other guys, but...
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Rota's officially kidnapped people.
Yes, basically.
Rota kidnapped people, endangered them, stole a yacht, breaking and entering. Like, Rota's done more crime than Takarada did.
I mean, to be fair, Takarada did steal 4 million yen.
He stole money, and he did break into a yacht, but, like, that was all he did.
I mean,
he didn't endanger.
I think the whole idea is that Takarada's just hiding out on the yacht, to be honest.
Yes. Instead of stealing, he was just hiding out there until morning.
Yeah.
And then he would go on his way.
Mm.
But speaking of him hiding out, the following scene when they're plotting, before that, there's some radio broadcast establishing that an American movie producer's yacht's missing. It's clearly established that this is the yacht, and that somebody broke in and stole 4 million yen, and he's on the loose, and Takarada shuts it off before it can really
continue.
Which they question. Which, first I'm going to say, I love the setup. I love them, like, not telling you that it's him, but also telling you that it's him. I think that's great.
Yeah. I like how we trust the audience to connect the dots.
But that being said, I don't understand why the characters are questioning it until halfway through the movie. Because literally it's established it's not his yacht. So we already know that he broke into the yacht. Why was he on the yacht? He had a gun. Why did he have a gun? Like, they question him about the stuff, and he just says, never mind it, like, ignore it. And they just do that. Like, throughout this movie, anytime they question his past, he says, don't worry about it, that's not important, and they don't worry about it.
I mean, to be fair, in the context of, it really isn't important for them when, you know, like, pretty much right after this, a storm comes and they get attacked by a giant claw in the sea.
Which, did the first, like, 15 minutes of this kind of remind you of Matango, too?
Yes. Oh, 100%, yeah.
Like, up until the appearance of the claw, this is basically the setup to Matango.
Right. Well, not quite the same with, like,
not the
characters, but, like, just, you know, a bunch of characters on a yacht drifting to... It's a similar sort of premise.
It is. And this is where throughout the film already, we've had some of Sato's score, but this is where it really starts getting intense.
Right.
Which, I love his score for this movie. It's very unique to this film. If I remember right, Son of Godzilla kind of reuses the motifs and the concepts of this score, but this will always be the score for Ebirah, like this sound.
I think that the actual music, specifically Ebirah's theme, like during this sequence in particular, is genuinely like a brilliant track, and it's one that, like, when I think of the music of this movie, I think of like the doon 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 doon.
Which was meant to sound a little bit like James Bond.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, it's a very James Bond-esque theme.
Right. And before we dive into that, because I think now... no, we'll hold off on talking about the James Bond connections this film has. Mm-hmm. But I do want to say, so another Sato film that I've watched that's not Raids Again or Ebirah, Son of Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, Megalon, is Yojimbo, directed by Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah.
Very similar score. Yojimbo and Ebirah have very similar sounds. And, like, when I watched Yojimbo for the first time, I was like, this has to be Sato. This sounds exactly like what he does. And I was right. And that is a beautiful score as well. I believe Sato actually did a lot of...
he was like the go-to for Kurosawa.
Yeah, Kurosawa hated...
Kurosawa didn't really like Ifukube.
Because they did the Dueling Pistols, I think. Is that the name of it?
I don't remember. I know they did like one film together and then they never worked together again.
They did The Quiet Duel together. And the reason that was the only film they ever did was because, as we all know, Ifukube knew what he was doing and would argue. I mean, he argued with Honda constantly. But Honda also knew Ifukube knew what he was doing. But Kurosawa did not deal with somebody who thought they knew more than he did on his own films. So yeah, no, they never worked together, but Sato did a lot of Kurosawa films. And at least Yojimbo, I mean, I have the Yojimbo main theme on my Spotify playlist for all of my music from films, because that, it's beautiful. The score it's playful. It's playful, it's upbeat, it's very lighthearted, very much like Ebirah, Horror of the Deep.
I'd have to give that another listen, honestly.
Have you seen Yojimbo?
I've seen the film, I just don't quite remember.
It's amazing film. Amazing film.
It's good.
But jumping back here into Ebirah, after the giant claw, our main characters wash up on an island. During the whole bad weather sequence, we do see that what was in the suitcase that Yoshimura's Takarada's character Yoshimura had was a lot of money, and now it's all gone.
Yep.
It's also worthy to note, while they were on the boat, Takarada's character was making a skeleton key. Which, as a kid, I wanted to make a skeleton key after watching this movie. I know that for a fact. Maybe that's where I start. I mean, I can sometimes pick locks. Maybe this is one of those, if you trace back my habits, this is one of those films that really made it a thing.
I see you really aspired to be the thief.
I aspire to be Akira Takarada, even though I never will be.
Okay, you know what? That's fair. I think everyone kind of aspires to be Akira Takarada in their own way.
Even the people that don't know who he is.
Yes.
Like the Academy.
Yes.
For not including him in the... Yeah.
But yeah. Going back to Ebirah, now that they're sort of stuck on the island, they decide to explore a bit, they find a machete and realize the island is likely inhabited, speculating that it might be cannibals.
Mm-hmm. Which they go through the very cliched Toho soundstage, forests and woods.
Yeah, but then they also just go through some actually beautiful looking locations as well.
Yes. The on-location shooting is beautiful, and I love the soundstage forests.
Yeah, I love it. It's just a little. It is. You can tell when they're on the soundstage and when they're actually on location, because there's a very distinct look to both.
Right. The soundstage stuff definitely gives me Gilligan's Island vibes. Do you know what Gilligan's Island is?
Not really.
So Gilligan's Island was a 1964 sitcom about a group of people. One of them was a professor. One was a millionaire and his wife, a movie star, a girl from Kansas, and then the skipper and his first mate, Gilligan.
You were
they go on
on sitcoms. Have you ever thought about that?
What?
You know all the sitcoms, man.
I know classic sitcoms because I watch classic sitcoms.
Have you ever thought of making sitcom conversation?
I mean, I do an Alf show. I'd happily do an Alf show. Which, real quick, it's very important, actually, now that I found out that I brought up Gilligan's Island. It was shown in Japan in 1966. So it's probably, this film definitely had to take inspiration from Gilligan's Island. And, because, I mean, the whole setup, Gilligan's Island, it's summarized in its opening theme. Just sit back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from this tropic port aboard this tiny ship. The mate was a mighty sailing man, the skipper brave and sure. 5 passengers set sail that day for a 3-hour tour. The weather started getting rough. The tiny ship was tossed. If not for the courage of the fearless crew, the minnow would be lost. The ship set ground on the shore of this uncharted desert isle, where Gilligan, the skipper too, the millionaire and his wife, the movie star, the professor, and Marianne here on Gilligan's Island. And it ran for, I believe it was 4 seasons, and each episode they would either have to find a way to survive on the island, or like things like people would like they would come out of an airplane and they'd land, and they would eat dinner with the crew and they would talk about getting off the island, and then it just so happens that they can't get 5 people and it's just the one dude that can leave. And so it would just be, each episode very episodic. What's the 5 plus the crew gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, Ebirah kind of does that. With like they set sail from a port, and they get into a bad weather storm. They crash on this island, and the look of the island is very much like Gilligan's Island. So, I mean, I think it wouldn't be too far-fetched to assume that, considering Gilligan's Island was broadcast in Japan in 1966, there would be some light influences from it, at least on the look of the show.
Perhaps, I guess.
Even their outfits, if I remember correctly, are kind of similar to those found. But then again, it was all kind of bright and cheerful and whatnot. So, I mean, it's your classic 60s look.
Right. Mm. But yeah, after a little bit, our characters eventually they spot a boat, and soon stumble across some sort of military-esque base.
Where from afar, they watch infant islanders, which, funny plot convenience, that they're from Infant Island, get escorted off this boat like, they're slaves. And there's barrels being rolled onto the boat where...
X1, which is... It's not really stated what X1 is, but like it's sort of... It's kind of implied that it's some sort of like nuclear material later on, though not really directly stated.
Right. See, I always thought that it was like the juice.
The yellow liquid?
Like they were refilling the yellow liquid.
See, that's what I thought at first, but like then... I mean, I guess it could be that as well. But also, they never really call it. They never really state that the yellow liquid is X1, and when they actually are trying to use the yellow liquid near the end of the film, they specifically call it the yellow liquid. So, why is the leader of one of the leaders of this organization, not calling it by its name when he was using it earlier?
That's true. My only thing is later on it's established that they're making nuclear... Well, I guess they're not... It's not established. It's assumed that they're making nuclear weapons, but...
Yeah. So, like...
Maybe not so much.
That's my interpretation, is that the X1 is, like, the nuclear material that they're creating.
Right, and I mean, it's...
trading it for the islanders at the moment, at least in this case. Or something like that. At least.
Right, which, see, I've never understood why they would be I mean, the Islanders don't do anything for the nuclear energy side. They're literally just there to make the yellow juice.
Right.
Which doesn't entirely make sense. Like, why would you have this like huge setup for nuclear energy and you would use slaves to make the berry juice? Also, what is with natives having berry juice that makes their monsters drunk and
Also,
aggressive?
why would you take the natives of Infant Island, of all the native islanders to enslave? Why would you be the ones with the god, with the literal god that you know could destroy all your setup in like an instant?
Right. It could have been something where, like, because if I remember correctly, the original script was going to happen on Faroe Island or Lecce Island or Skull Island. Like, it was going to take place
this island
on.
does take place on Lecce. This film is
Oh, that's
Lecce
right.
Island. Although in the film it's only called Devil Island or Rackham Island.
Right. Then is the one from King Kong Escapes, is that Mondo Island?
I wouldn't remember.
I want to say it's Mondo. Like, it was going to take place on Kong's Island, whatever that would be. So perhaps,
I mean, since it changes each Toho film, it doesn't really matter what it's called now, does it?
right. So perhaps maybe it was a thing where in the original script it was the natives of the island would be captured and they'd be forced to make the liquid to make,
which would probably
like, they knew how to.
More sense, in all honesty, for them.
Right, like
knowing how to get rid of Ebirah and also at him.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, in theory, like maybe the fruit is like home, like its home is on the island. The islanders know how to make it to like push Ebirah away, like for whenever they needed to use the water and like swim or like use a boat or something. And so like they knew of it. Kong probably got knocked out after his fight with Godzilla, because if I remember correctly, the plan was to have it be in the same universe as Godzilla, and if it did well, they would renew the license, and we would have a series of King Kong Toho films.
Yeah.
Which, in theory, I think probably would have made it so Godzilla kind of disappeared. Like, if Kong proved to, that would have been an interesting, like, the whole later half the Showa era doesn't exist and it was just King Kong films. That's kind of an interesting like thought process. Like a series of Japanese made King Kong movies.
Damn. I'd say it's the worst timeline.
So like, yeah, maybe like originally it wasn't Infant Islanders, it was the Skull Islanders. The berries grew there, they knew how to make it. The Red Bamboo was a terrorist organization that took over the island. They didn't realize Kong was there, and Kong, was knocked out in a cave somewhere and whatnot. That makes more sense than, bringing people from another island to another island, and they just so happen to know Ebirah, how to make the berry juice, and the whole situation. Right,
yeah. It's definitely a bit of a convenient setup, all things considered, and I think that's a consistent trend in this film script. There's a lot of conveniences and not really anything being all that developed either.
Yeah,
because the Red Bamboo, we really don't know much of anything about them. Like, we have an idea that they're some sort of terrorist organization and like they're developing nuclear weapons, but it doesn't really go much further than that.
Yeah, it just there's not a lot established, and everything's convenient. Like, while this whole trade-off is happening, two of the islanders run away. They avoid all the gun bullets being shot at them.
Gun bullets.
Gun bullets. And they somehow come across the boat.
Yeah, just a raft.
Just a raft sitting, waiting for them to use. It's like, more convenience.
It's almost like the screenwriter gave it to them.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, again, if it was originally like Kong's Island and the natives lived there, it would make sense why there would be a raft sitting on the shore. So it's obvious the film got kind of GVK'd. Except, I mean, they still have a plot and they have characters and there's development, but there's a lot that's just like, yep, this happens.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
But the point of this scene is essentially to establish that while boats in the area will be attacked by Ebirah, if you have this special yellow liquid like the red bamboo are using, they can mask their ships in it and Ebirah will ignore them. Right.
And when we see Ebirah, attack the tiny, tiny raft, which I thought was kind of funny, Ebirah skewers the two people, and that's like the most violent thing we've seen in the Toho Godzilla series yet. Like, the only other thing I can think of is either the octopus grabbing people and throwing it from King Kong Versus, or maybe when Godzilla killed people using his atomic breath in 54.
I mean, I feel like 54 portrays it a lot more,
darker,
yeah.
But that also has to do with the cinematography and the tone, So, but I mean, either way, this is the darkest thing the franchise has had, and honestly, this is the darkest it gets for a long time. Up until Hedorah, it took them a full 5 years to go this dark again.
Which is funny because the rest of this film really isn't dark or particularly violent.
Right.
I mean, honestly, some of the previous films like Ghidorah and even Godzilla vs. Megalon have more actual brutal violence with the humans, shooting each other and very visibly bleeding.
Mm-hmm. Right, the violence, the human on human violence increases. Almost, I would say, maybe following this movie, because Son of Godzilla does have some pretty intense moments. With the high fevers and the characters going mad. But not nearly as much. I mean, Destroy All Monsters, you get a little more violent. I mean, there's some actual scenes of people bleeding and whatnot, and people killing themselves, which is,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it now that you say it, this whole sequence is kind of jarring.
I don't know if I'd call it jarring. It's just a bit more violent than, I guess, the rest of the film.
Right. It's also worthy to note that the main guy
is that the infant islanders are being trafficked to be slaves.
It's also worthy to note that the person leading this operation is none other than Akihito Hirata, who is wearing an eye patch again, but on the opposite eye.
Yeah, an intentional inversion of his character in 54.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but following this scene, Kumi Mizuno's character does get away during this whole scuffle.
Yeah, she escapes. She meets up with that main cast and makes friends with them before the Red Bamboo go searching for them, and a fair bit of chasing ensues.
But we're also, before they start the chase, we're intercut with scenes on Infant Island, right?
Well, yeah, around after this chase is when that starts.
Gotcha.
Once they escape the Red Bamboo and enter the cave, then Kumi Mizuno basically explains that, hey, Ryuta, your brother's alive. He's on Infant Island for some reason. Somehow everybody else gets on Lecce Island, but he went to Infant Island. Yeah, I thought at the beginning of the movie, I thought the implication was him being lost. Oh, he's probably been attacked by Ebirah and is a slave to the rest of the Infant Islands. It does because I couldn't remember. I didn't remember much of the plot of this movie in the first half. But yeah, no, this is where we cut to Mothra on Infant Island.
Oh boy,
sleeping.
Oh boy.
I see you.
Tell me that we've fallen from grace without telling me we fell from grace.
See, the matte painting is okay. Mothra herself, the puppet.
Mothra looks like
Awful.
she got roughed up by a couple of dogs. But even more so than that,
color.
yeah, her color's gone. But even more than that, the set. So in Mothra versus Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and even in Mothra 1961, the sets for Infant Island are, I mean, they're dark and they're kind of boding, but they're beautiful. The sets are huge, like they're beautiful sets. The place where they worship Mothra is this beautiful like temple. The costumes are extravagant, and the music, if Akube had picked, is very grandiose and very beautiful. And it does definitely feel foreign. It gives you a foreign feel. But now they've kind of changed. I mean, Infant Island now looks a lot like Skull Island or Pharaoh Island from King Kong Versus.
Yeah, it just isn't the same Infant Island as in the previous films. And I mean, in some regards, that might have been intentional. Because, like,
How so?
From what I understand, so the Mothra twins in this film, previously they had been played by the Peanut twins, but they've been recast in this film. I had initially, like, in the past assumed that, they were recast because, like, Yuki and Emi Ito just didn't want to play the characters anymore, but apparently, like, this was, like, a casting decision on Toho's end, not because, like, they couldn't get the Peanuts back. They just specifically wanted new actors for this film.
So I'm going to agree with you, and then I'm going to ask a question. Because I've heard that the whole reason, because a lot of the cast in this film is new, fresh blood. There's, of course, your Toho, like the main characters are fresh, but a lot of your supporting characters and your implied lead are all Toho alumni, but the whole crew was meant to be kind of fresh meat besides Sekizawa, who had, been working with Toho since Varan. So they were kind of wanting a fresh new take, a fresh Godzilla, bringing new and younger people into the franchise, which it worked. That was the main audience that did go see it. But why? Like, I'm sorry, but these the Shobijin in this are not it.
Yeah.
They are not it. Yumi and Emi Ito are beautiful.
Shobijin.
And yes, like, there's a reason that after them, they only appeared once in my book. Like, those two were iconic, and we have not hit that iconicness since.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's no real other contextual information for that decision. I mean, maybe they wanted new faces just for the sake of new faces. Maybe, I don't know, could it have been cheaper to get younger actors and people? Was it like, I was going to suggest, like, I believe it's the Red Bambi is the name of the pair in this film. Were they bigger stars at the time? I mean, I don't think they were, because I can't find a lot of information on them.
So the Peanuts, the reason they appeared was, so Mothra, 1961, was a co-production between Columbia and Toho. Columbia was a subdivision of Sony, and Sony had the Peanuts signed to their record label. Or Columbia, whichever one. Their record label was who the Peanuts worked for, and part of the deal was they would provide the Peanuts as actresses that would do music for the movie. And back then, and I'm sure there's still, there's still situations and instances where that's how you get original music in films, is who's attached to your record label. But what happened is they signed on for a 3-picture deal. And that was through the contract Toho had stated with Columbia that they would appear in 3 films and they would perform music. That's how we got Mothra, then Mothra versus Godzilla, and then Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. After Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, that contract was up, and of course nothing happened in 65, so there was no reason to renew it. But I would imagine they would have went for that in 66, but from what you're telling me, that's not the case. So maybe it was a time production budget thing, because they were pretty big.
Yeah.
They were pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is maybe that's why there's a lot of these younger and less well-known actors, because really the only big stars here are your supporting cast and then Takarada and Mizuno.
Right. The ones who were, typically contracted by Toho, were Toho actors, so they would appear in whatever, and sometimes it would just be they were on set for a day.
Yeah. I mean, I heard that one of the main actors, I don't remember which one it is, I should have written it down, but I heard that possibly one of them might not have actually been properly employed with Toho. Apparently, at least. I don't know how true that actually is, mind you. That was Wikipedia, so that, the reliability of that, very questionable. So take that for what you will.
I'm going to guess that that's probably Toru Watanabe, who played Ryota.
I want to say it was him. It was one of those main... It was one of the main ones, yeah.
Because he only appeared in one other movie, and it was not a Kaiju Tokusatsu. This was one of 2 films I could find. It was
probably him, yeah, then.
But no, I mean, Mothra and the Mothra lore and stories have always never been my favorite. But this one definitely is just awful. I cannot stand this Mothra.
I don't care for this interpretation of Infant Island. I think it's the lamest. Mm-hmm. It just kind of doesn't feel like Mothra.
Right. And maybe this was one of those sets that was built to be like Faroe Island. Maybe that was, I keep saying maybe this, maybe that. But they did, they had everything ready for production. They just didn't have the script done and finalized. So maybe the reason it does kind of look like this is where King Kong would be worshipped is because that was the original intent.
Maybe. It's just not enough information on it, I guess.
But transitioning back into the story of Ebirah, we get some more, plotting and ploying and intercut with the Red Bamboo doing Red Bamboo things. Our main characters finally decide on a plan, and they're trying to figure out who's going to go. Everybody but 2 of them agrees to go, and one of them trips and sneezes, and his ear lands on a rock, and he hears a dun 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 dun. Which then we start getting I love Sato's score for him. It's very Ifukube-esque, but it's also not. And the heartbeat is none other than, obviously,
Godzilla.
Which, why he's here?
Why is he just strewn about in a cave?
That makes him look like he hasn't been out for years.
I mean, they basically have to wake him up with lightning.
Which we'll talk about the problems with that.
Because he's been presumably sleeping here for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Is he in hibernation?
Something like that. But they're horrified by Godzilla, which, tracks.
Fair enough.
And so they all agree to go do the plan, which is a bush gag.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where you really start to see the spy-esque of this film.
Oh yeah.
And I wanted to stop here and kind of talk about this. So James Bond is one of the biggest franchises in the world. I mean, it's up there with Godzilla in terms of consistency.
Yeah, and movie counts.
Mm-hmm. But James Bond was very popular in the late 60s, or early to mid 60s.
Yeah. And I mean, hell, Toho had worked with the production companies on the James Bond series with one of the films, using Toho sets and even Toho actors from the Godzilla series.
Right, and that was from You Only Live Twice, which was released in 1967, the year after Ebirah.
Yeah.
The film prior, Thunderball, was very popular to my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that in 1965, there was a Toho James Bond knockoff titled 100 Shot, 100 Killed, also known as, is it Iron Finger?
Yeah.
Which a person by the name of Mr. Bullseye is our James Bond-esque character. And who plays this character?
None other than Akira Takarada.
And it was, to my understanding, it actually did very well.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very popular film, and it was Takarada playing more of a comedic character. It did well, and Toho was wanting to do a sequel to the film, titled, and this is kind of interesting, the original plan was to have a film titled Big Duel in the South Seas. So people have said that this is basically a spiritual, Ebirah is a spiritual sequel to Iron Finger. The film did well. They wanted to do a sequel. The script in question was titled Big Duel in the South Seas, which is what the subtitle of the film we're talking about in Japan was given. And Takarada does play a kind of spy-ish character. If I remember right, Takarada really liked how this character was a little bit darker, but also comedic. And then, you had his heroic, serious characters, and you had his, spy character, which was more comedic. He really liked this character.
I mean, he would eventually return the next year in Iron Finger's actual sequel, Golden Eyes, which was also directed by Jun Fukuda.
Right, and Jun Fukuda also directed 100 Shot, 100 Kills. Which, real quick, Golden Eyes is the name of a James Bond movie too, right?
I think it's Golden Finger?
Golden Eye from 1995. Yeah,
oh, yeah.
It's a James Bond movie.
One of the most iconic ones, is it not?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, they named a whole video game after it.
But no, so now with this context, so they were wanting to, take influence from James Bond, which was becoming very popular. They were producing James Bond parodies, and this took some of the script elements from that film. And, it's basically the same creative team behind Iron Finger. Suddenly, this movie and its influences from James Bond and like the music and whatnot suddenly become a lot more understandable.
Right.
Which further confirms that this film was always intended to be a comedy, a parody of sorts of the spy genre. And this bush sequence, which is hilarious, by the way, is one of those sequences. And then Takarada's hobby of, making the skeleton key and picking locks comes into, importance here because they get to break into the base and do some snooping. And nobody questions. He tells them not to question his hobbies, and they don't.
I mean, hey, it is a fun running gag in the film, honestly.
And at this point, that's what it really becomes, is just a running gag.
Yeah, with him just deflecting all the things. Like, "Oh, clearly you guys have never spent any time being chased by the police. Moving on."
Not to brag, but I have a hunch when I'm being hunted. I'm getting the feeling now. See, my hunch was right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, they snoop around, realize that they're in like a heavy water plant facility, and that the red bamboo are probably creating or producing like radioactive material for nuclear weaponry.
Right, which, I mean, this establishes the anti-nuclear themes that are typical in Godzilla movies, which this one's kind of interesting. I love the whole, like, a terrorist organization's building atomic bombs on a resort, like a remote island. That's kind of cool. I kind of like that.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually they get caught, but thankfully with some smoke bombs they found earlier, they manage to make an escape where we get some more comedic moments with Takarada and one of the other guys hiding the other characters behind some like metal plates while they pretend to be like just lab workers.
But their plan doesn't work out and they're chased after. Takarada, one of the college guys, and Mizuno's character escape. One of them gets caught, and then one gets his foot wrapped up in a balloon.
And then he somehow ends up on Infant Island.
What convenience.
It's such a funny moment in the script.
And, like, he doesn't fall. Like, the balloon literally just, like, right in the middle of all of them.
Bro, and it's like strong grip, too. I mean, he ties himself up a bit, but still. He just
plot convenience, convenience.
Yeah. But it's just
this should really be called Godzilla, Ebirah, Mothra, the big duel of plot convenience in the South Seas.
Yeah. But Mothra does like nothing.
You know, now that you say that, it makes sense why Mothra gets third billing in the kaiju.
Yeah. She does nothing for 2/3 of the movie.
Now, I forgot to bring this up, but I think I heard somewhere that reportedly the reason Mothra was included was at the time Mothra was a very popular character.
Yeah.
So that's why they threw her in here, kind of like a GMKified version of Ebirah. But her role is such a reduced, irrelevant role. It's like, why? Why even include her?
So that you can include her name on the title and poster.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Hey, it's good marketing value. But yeah, our trio that are still not captured or on an Infant Island side quest escape back to the cave and eventually plan to wake up Godzilla.
You mean release the most destructive weapon on Earth?
Yes.
But yeah, so they use Mizuno's character's copper wiring she found, hook it up to the sword, and they electrify Godzilla and bring him back to life.
Passed, mind you.
Right. Meanwhile, on the Infant Island side quest that you've dubbed it, and we're going to call it that, the two brothers plan on going back to Lecce Island and save everybody somehow.
Yeah.
With what weapons, I don't know, but they're going to do it.
The Mothra twins tell him, like, you're not going to understand this yet, but trust us, make a big net. And then they just refuse to elaborate.
Plot got a plot. So, Godzilla's woken up with electricity, right?
Yeah.
But in the previous film, Mothra vs. Godzilla, it's established Godzilla is not immune to electricity, and it actually hurts him.
I mean, in King Kong vs. Godzilla, it's just straight up his weakness.
And they established that also in 54, saying the high-tension wires will slow him down. They say it'll stop him, but it does slow him down. So up until this movie, Godzilla's like anti-electricity. But now suddenly that's what you use to bring him back to life.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on in Mechagodzilla, that's how he gets power-ups.
Yeah.
I love the inconsistency with Godzilla and electricity.
Mm-hmm.
But also, and you told me off cast that you finally connected the dots on the King Kong thing, because in 62 it's established that King Kong gains power from electricity and lightning. So it would make sense why King Kong would be in a cave and they would use lightning to wake him up.
I mean, yeah, only just like I made the connection that the reason they use lightning to wake up Godzilla is because it was a King Kong script originally.
Which I guess Toho liked the lightning idea.
Yeah.
Which originally that was for Frankenstein.
Yeah, yeah. No wonder why this movie was called Frankenstein in Germany.
I mean, wasn't this the first one to be dubbed Frankenstein? I think it was.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, God, such a weird concept for Godzilla. I mean, it's not, again, there's clearly some like blueprints for a King Kong story in this.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them comes up here in a little bit too. Because as they're waking up Godzilla, the two brothers are in the area where the giant claw appears. Which, I mean, their boat gets wrecked, but they don't die because, look out, world, you better run, because ready or not, here he comes.
Godzilla emerges and engages in the great duel of the South Seas with Ebirah.
Which I also want to say, during the whole scene with the brothers meeting the giant claw, there's no music and it's awful.
Yeah, it's not as effective as the earlier scene of the giant claw.
No, and if I remember correctly, there's not music during this first fight. Or am I wrong? Is it the second fight there's no music?
Don't remember. I don't recall there being music during the first fight, I guess.
That's right, because it's just them hitting the rock back and forth and there's no music, yeah. Which, I don't know why suddenly Sato shuts up here. It definitely makes the fight... I mean, the fight's brutal. Like, it's a pretty brutal fight. Even though Ebirah is literally one of the worst Godzilla opponents ever, because, like, he uses atomic breath and, like, knocks him out pretty bad. But there's no music here. The fight's kind of bland. I mean, it's funny. Like, the whole volleyball scene is funny. And it is a brutal fight, but for the most part, it's kind of boring without the music.
I don't know. I thought it was still a pretty fun scene overall.
I
think
definitely...
the volleyball bit goes on a tad too long, like a couple seconds too long. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a fun fight overall. I don't like the part where they go into the water, though. That I will agree is it's nothing great.
Right. But this movie does...
It is a little funny when Godzilla just punches him with the boulder, though, underwater.
Yes. I was like, that's a weird scene. Okay.
And the framing of that shot as well just makes it even goofier, I think.
Yeah, because it starts off as a medium shot with Godzilla with the rock, and then it cuts to like a close-up.
As well.
Yeah, very awkward, like he's sitting down.
Right.
And he's just like reaching out with his rock and just hitting Ebirah. And it cuts to a close-up of just the rock just hitting his head. And then it cuts back and he's like drops the rock and gets up. It's like, what are we doing? Why is Godzilla just sitting at the bottom of the ocean with this rock in his hand just hitting the head of Ebirah? Bonk, bonk, bonk.
And it's worth mentioning that because of the reduced budget, the Godzilla suit in this film during this sequence is just the Daisen Sogoji suit from the previous film.
Right.
Although it is worth noting that if you notice, Godzilla leans forward a lot more in this movie than in the previous film. The reason is because the head has been reattached. And so, like, if he just stands up tall, like, straight normally, the head will actually be looking too far up. And so that's why Nakajima is constantly, like, leaning forward during this.
So this was shot after the Oh, it would have had to have
I
been. It
think
was
this-
shot after.
I think this is shot before the head was taken for
Ultraman.
Ultraman. Yeah, I think this is shot before that.
But
Because
why would the head be detached?
I don't know. I mean, maybe they just for storage, perhaps. Storage reasons is my guess. I don't really know why it was detached, but if you actually look at photos of it and you compare it to the Daisenso Goji, you can tell the head position is different. And as well as that, in these earlier scenes with that head, it also, the suit is in a lot better condition as well. Because of this water fight and all the scenes that the suit spends in the water, the suit actually gets very heavily damaged. So much so that near the end of the film, you can actually see the armpits are just falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, everyone points to that scene in Godzilla vs. Gigan where that suit, the Destroyer Monsters suit, is falling apart. You can see the exact same thing happening in the last scene of this film.
Right. No, when Godzilla jumps up, I mean, you can see the air pockets.
Yeah, you can see you can see the air pockets in the neck area, but you can really see, if you pay attention, you can see right before he jumps, there's literally a tear in the armpits.
Yeah, no, this suit was screwed.
Yeah, I mean, and later on in the film, during the ending, once they've got the second head that was made as a replica of an attempted replica of the Daisenso Gochi head, that looks awful. The suit has also just kind of lost its form as well, which I think might be because they removed the padding. Because it's said that there's less padding in the suit for this film. And then combine that with the damage from the water filming, I presume that's why it's losing its shape.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but did they reuse this suit for the water scenes in 67 and 72?
Yeah.
And it looks atrocious.
Not in 72. Not in 72. In 72, that's the Son of Godzilla suit.
Okay, gotcha. Because I know they both look. I mean,
this suit is retired in Hedera because it's used in
Hedera.
Yeah, it's used when Hedera uses
the sludge.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yes, that's right. Yes. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and some scenes of Destroyer Monsters as well. When he destroys when he first emerges from the water.
That's right. Because
this became the go-to water suit for a little bit.
Because it already had the water damage. What's a little more going to do to this thing?
Yeah.
But so after the fight with Ebirah, that's kind of awkward.
That's okay. It's a fun. I think it's a fun sequence.
We go back to our cast trying to figure out a plan to fight the Red Bamboo when they're being listened. And as I previously mentioned, Takarada makes a joke about knowing when he's hunted, and then they find out they're being tracked.
They immediately get shot at.
And as they're running away, Kumi Mizuno runs into Godzilla.
Yes.
Who's just chilling on a part of the island. And honestly, the island's not that big. Wouldn't you be able to find Godzilla pretty quick?
He is uncharacteristically interested in her.
I'm trying to come up with a funny joke here, but everything I can think of is creepy.
And after just observing her for a while she's too scared to move, he just takes a nap.
Just in the same spot, he just closes his eyes and just goes to sleep.
Pops a squat.
And then they escape, but while they're escaping, the giant condor comes out of
shows
nowhere.
up for some reason.
Which, this is arguably one of the craziest fights Godzilla dealt with in the Showa era.
This is just one of the worst fights as well.
I mean, the editing is awful. Like, it's like all over the place and just out of nowhere. And
I mean, honestly, I don't blame the editor, because really what was there to work with, to be honest? It's just like the giant condor like tapping its beak against his head a couple times.
Right. And then he like...
I guess he's maybe clawing at Godzilla with his like claws.
His tiny little claws.
Talons?
Yeah. Now, wasn't this a Rodan puppet?
Yes, it was a 30 centimeter Rodan puppet that would also be, or was also used in Ultra Q.
Mm-hmm.
That I think this is after it was used for Ultra Q, I want to say.
I would imagine so.
It would have been. It would have been. Because Ultra Q finished by July. So yeah, it would have been. Because this was used for Litra in Ultra Q.
And then they would later they would undo everything on this and reuse it for Destroy All Monsters, would they not?
Would they? I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure they do.
Maybe. I don't remember.
Which, after this fight that lasts about 30 seconds and the giant condor gets burned and falls into the water.
I don't know why this scene exists outside of just have another monster show up for some reason.
Well, here's my biggest issue. As soon as this is done, they repeat the scene.
Yeah, except the red bamboo fighters.
With music that makes no sense and is so out of place. Because it's like this happy, cheery, like, exotic song. And it's like, why are we playing this?
Yeah. No, it's really bizarre.
And it is quite literally just the same scene twice, but with fighter jets instead of the giant condor.
And ever so slightly better.
And see, I would get these scenes if they were spaced out in the film.
Yeah, no, I can understand it if they're spaced out, but why are they happening one after another? What?
Right, it definitely feels like maybe like they were trying to figure out, okay, so we could either do a giant bird or we could do fighter jets, and that's how Godzilla gets distracted. Let's do, like, they shot both and they're like, let's do both. Let's throw them both in here.
We need them both in here so that we can keep the kids entertained because Godzilla. That's my best guess for the thought process behind this. Because otherwise there is... I don't see why the condor is here. I feel like it would make more sense to have the red bamboo attack.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the condor's not even... Why is the condor here? Just why? Why does it exist?
That is most of this movie. Why does this exist? Why are we doing this?
But yeah.
What is this?
Their attack aggravates Godzilla and he goes on a little rampage across their base.
Which is funny because they were told to stay because they were going to send reinforcements so they can finish doing their job on creating nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And then they're forced to retreat because their fighter jets did not help. They made the problem worse.
Yeah.
And this is where we're established the ticking time bomb cliche.
Yeah. Oh, we should also mention that prior to this, the guy who had been captured by the Red Bamboo, Nita, was made to be a slave alongside the Infinite Islanders, but he gave them the bright idea, hey, this yellow liquid you're making, why the hell don't we just make a phony?
Right. Now, I want to bring up, since we're talking about at least one character, this is something I do appreciate about this film and its story. If this would have been made in America and written in America, I guarantee you one of the side characters would have transition to the red bamboo side and like double cross the friends to create a problem, only to like
You know what character it would have been? Takarada's.
Yeah. No, because his character is perfect for that.
Yeah.
But they keep him as a like good guy throughout, which I appreciate. I love that. Like there is a spot and a place for that story concept of somebody going to the dark side only to double cross them and go to the the good side, the light side.
Yeah, but I don't think that would fit this film.
I mean, I think it would work.
I mean, maybe if there was like actual development for the red bamboo, it could work. But as is, they are a bare bones antagonist organization.
Right. I mean, in a way, Takarada kind of plays the Han Solo of this story.
Yeah. But actually, while we're speaking of like this story, one thing that is interesting in contrast to some of Sekizawa's previous scripts with this film is how like in Ghidorah, for example, the monster and human plots in that film is very divorced from each other, but they tend to like intersect at certain points. This film, it's very much one plot line that like both parties are attached to,
right?
Which it's a fun change of pace from those previous films that I really appreciate.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is Toho's attempt to not only decrease the budget but also change the setting, because it's all on an island, so like they're required to like work within the confines of that island, with like occasionally being off of it for the Infant Island side quest and the establishment of like the situation going on. That's in the first 15 minutes. But outside of the 15 minutes and the like probably 10 minutes on Infant Island, so 25 minutes total, the rest of the 87-minute runtime is
spent
entirely
on Lecce Island,
which does end up with that, the human characters are intertwined with the kaiju are intertwined with the human characters. And this is a great example. It does have one Sekizawa thing where the humans impact the kaiju and the kaiju impact the humans, right? Like King Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, Rodan drops Godzilla on a power line, and that saves Princess Salno from being assassinated with high voltage electricity.
Right, which sort of happens in a similar thing here when the characters are in, the Red Bamboo's base, and a scientist is threatening them. We're going to blow up the space. The whole island's going to explode like a nuke and just be gone. And then, Godzilla, destroys a bit of the base, and the scientist ends up getting killed.
Like, that's a Sekizawa cliche.
Right. But again, this film is more divorced from that, like, just having it be two separate plots that intertwine. Rather, it's just one straightforward narrative in this film.
Right, and I will say, I think for the most part, that's how they started approaching these films.
Yeah, from what I recall, yeah.
Outside of, like, I think Damn kind of doesn't. It kind of goes along with the two side stories.
Not really, because the monsters are kind of just under alien control for most of the movie.
That's right, that's true. I'm trying to think what... I think it wouldn't be until the Heisei era at this point then that the humans and the kaiju aren't directly intertwined. Because Terror of Mechagodzilla Katsura is quite literally Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, it controls Titanosaurus as well.
King Caesar is awoken by the human characters. It's all from a like ancient legend and like prophecy. And the human characters, and then, the aliens are controlling Mechagodzilla and whatnot. Gigan, the human characters play the tape, and that's what brings Godzilla and Anguirus to fight Ghidorah and Gigan.
I mean, I guess that's kind of the closest one to having, like, that classic sort of Sekizawa, like, approach to like Ghidorah, because the kaiju are doing that of their own agency, really, rather than any like actions that the humans are intentionally doing to summon them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's kind of the closest ish.
Right. But outside of that, I think, would it be 84? It's been a long time since I've seen 84 before they would kind of...
I mean, 84 is more like a 54, more like 54 in its approach, really.
Right. So where Godzilla's like just this thing that we can't stop and we're trying to prevent.
Yeah, pretty much.
So maybe Biollante?
I guess, maybe.
But now that you bring that up, I guess that kind of is why I do... There's something about the early 60s, early to that mid, like Astro Monster,
right,
where it feels different. Like the human characters have their own story, the kaiju have their own story, and they're intertwined periodically through the film. And that's something I love. Like that is a story concept I think is really good. The humans...
It works in Ghidorah.
Yes, absolutely.
I think
I'm trying to think
a prime example of that type of story.
Yes. Khaled says it best. Humans deal with humans, monsters fight monsters, I think is how he says it. And in the third act, they somehow find a way to intertwine with each other, which I think's really good. Like, I love that that's such a cool concept. Because now, like, it's either they're this looming force of nature that we have to fight, or we're directly impacting their story and what they're doing. Which, I mean, that follows in line with the idea of, like, we're the problem. Like, we're the reason that this is all happening. But like in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, we don't do anything to wake Rodan up. We don't do anything to get Godzilla back here. We don't do anything for Ghidorah landing. The only things that the humans directly do is call Mothra, tell Mothra to tell the Godzilla and Rodan to come together, and they deny that. Only later do they finally work together. And that's a beautiful scene that made me cry in theaters, but I'm not going to talk about that.
But you just did.
I just did. But no, like, that is such a good way of storytelling, but you are absolutely right. This film does approach it differently, and it's a very nice breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
But I will say, during all of this, there is the whole ticking time bomb thing in Godzilla, destroying the island, the red bamboo, get off the island, use the
fake yellow liquid.
The fake yellow liquid. Our main characters are either trapped or trying to get off the island and get stuff figured out. Try to build
a big net.
A big net.
All the while, Godzilla and Ebirah fight each other after the red bamboo are slaughtered by Ebirah.
And honestly, all of this does feel a little anticlimactic.
I didn't really get that feeling from that, honestly.
I don't know. It just
I don't think the red bamboo were developed enough for anything to really feel anticlimactic, to be honest.
But for me, it's the whole, like, so they establish a ticking time bomb plot cliche, which is to try and build suspense. And the music that Sato does is clearly made to create suspense as well. It is such a drag. Because, like, the final fight between Godzilla and Ebirah is very just bland. I mean, Ebirah is one of Godzilla's worst villains in the Showa era. Like, Ebirah does not do anything to Godzilla at all.
I mean, I have no issue with him. I never really got the idea that the film is trying to make him seem like he is this big evil bad. He's just blocking the exit for our characters, essentially, because they can't.
But Godzilla dispatches him, like, in 30 seconds.
Yeah. I don't see what's wrong with that. It's fun.
It's just, it's very obvious that Godzilla was way more powerful than Kong. And that created an issue with the whole Ebirah thing. Like, honestly, it almost feels like a second fight here is unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, you could have easily had him not reappear, to be honest, after that first fight.
Yeah.
And
have, like, Godzilla kill the red bamboo or something. Like, that would have worked perfectly fine.
Yeah. But I think the moment of Godzilla just ripping off both of Ebirah's claws is pretty fun.
That is the funnest sequence in the in both fights. That's the most fun. And then, like, he, like, gets the two and, like, opens and closes it.
The only part where I'd say it really the ending kind of drags is when, like, Godzilla comes back on shore just to attack Mothra.
Yeah, and since we're talking about Mothra, during all of this, it's intercut with the Infant Islanders doing their song, trying to wake up Mothra.
Finally wakes up in the last 8 minutes of the film. Or not even 8, like 5 minutes, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. And it's so boring. And I think that's why I think that the whole ticking time bomb thing drags, is because the Mothra thing takes way too long. And that's something later Showa struggles with. Because the same issue happens with King Caesar. Like, the song goes on 1.5 minutes way too long.
Yeah.
Mothra taking, like...
Even then, King Caesar's eventual appearance is a lot more satisfying, I'd say.
Because of Teruyoshi Nakano.
Yeah, that's true. And just, how banger that finale is.
Mm-hmm. But no, Mothra just kind of wakes up and flies off. And, we get our main characters...
with Godzilla.
Right, yeah, because our main characters build a net. Mothra picks them up. Godzilla walks over to Mothra, and Mothra just, like, slaps him and then flies off.
Yeah.
And, like, but I will say, as soon as Godzilla, like, rampages, I feel like the movie just kind of stops.
What, like, across, like, when he's, like, rampaging the red bamboo?
After he rampages the red bamboo's base, fights Ebirah, the movie just stops. Like, there's nothing left. Like, there's no threats. The ticking time bomb thing is the only thing, but because they're building a net, because they know Mothra will come, it's like, we're just waiting on Mothra to get here.
Mm.
It's like that.
Go on for very long, so I don't really see it being a major issue.
You could cut easily 3 minutes out of this ending.
I mean, maybe a minute or two, but it's a very quick ending, all things considered. This is like the last 5 minutes of the movie.
I think you could cut this ending in half and it would be a little better.
Maybe? I don't know. It's not really a lot to cut.
But Mothra does pick them up, fights Godzilla, and they fly off, and they're like, oh no, Godzilla, get off the island! Ah! And Godzilla just takes his sweet time, like, jumping off of this cliff.
Bro's not worried.
I mean, like, here's the thing.
To be fair, he is a creature of the atom bomb, so he has no reason to be worried.
Right, he's going to be fine either way. But he does jump off the island blows up, and
with stock footage from The Crazy Adventure.
I was wondering if that was stock footage.
See, I had no clue it was stock footage, but apparently it is.
See, it looked too complex and complicated to be from this movie, if I'm going to be honest.
True. Too big of a miniature to be used to be from this film.
Yeah. And so our main characters are in the basket, and they see Godzilla swimming off, which, I mean, we get, it's a nice sequence. It's a nice sequence here. And then we get Mothra, an animated Mothra, flying to Infant Island.
The end.
And that's it. We're done. Da, 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 the end. So that's Godzilla, Ebirah, Mothra, Big Duel in the South Seas.
Yeah.
Now, this movie was also shown on Mystery Science Theater 3000. It was the first Godzilla movie to be shown on there. I haven't seen that episode. I mean, I feel like this makes sense why they would riff it. There's a lot of stuff you could easily riff in this movie.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But in saying that, yeah, I actually, as someone who's never cared much for this movie, as someone who's never liked this movie, I actually had a fair lot of fun this time around.
Yeah, I mean, the film is made to be comedy more so than like past Godzilla films, like I said. I mean, it's big. I mean, it's not big, but
Not big.
it's colorful. It's fun. You know, the last 10 minutes I think are,
I'll
a
agree the
little
last
slow.
15 minutes is the worst part of the movie.
Mhm. But everything up until that like moves very fast.
Yeah.
It's not the most entertaining, but it is a fun watch.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not the worst. Like, we've already covered worse Godzilla movies than this.
Yeah.
And it's not Fukuda's worst either, I think. At least I think. I could be wrong.
I mean, having recently rewatched Megalon, I can vouch that this is not his worst film.
We might have different opinions on Megalon. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch it. But I will say, for the most part, this is fun. I mean, it's far from the best for Fukuda. It's far from the best for the Showa era, but it is an entertaining watch.
Here.
Yes. So
there's some beautiful cinematography in this film as well at times.
Yeah, no, the cinematography and like the colors, like this is a very colorful film.
Yeah. The production design is okay. The Red Bamboo's base isn't the best, but it's not terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's okay. This is an okay movie.
Now, Fukuda hated this movie.
Yeah, but Fukuda hated all of his Godzilla films.
Up until like right before he died, because he saw that so many people liked what he did.
Yeah, but I mean, I think he kind of hated the production of this film. So,
Yeah, I mean, they kept cutting stuff and kept forcing him to do things, and it just...
All the while, he just wanted to work on his TV show script.
So, yeah, I mean, Ebirah's okay. It's all right.
It's not as bad as I remember, which you know what? If that's my takeaway, I'm happy I now look at this film in a more positive light. I kind of understand what people see in Ebirah now. See,
I think I've always... maybe I like it a little more now. I don't know. I've never viewed this film as like, oh, I'm going to go watch Ebirah.
No, same.
Like, I've never
cared for this movie. This is like the most this is by far the most I've enjoyed this film.
Right. And honestly, I might venture to say I think the best thing about this movie for me is picking apart what probably was in the King Kong script and what was rewritten. Just because I think that's such a fun thing to do with this, is just that script analysis.
Right.
But do you want me to transition into the cast and the crew, and then we'll finish with our ranking and whatnot?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, directed by Jun Fukuda, who is assistant director on Rodan, and then director on Secret of the Talesian, Son of Godzilla, Operation Mystery, which he co-wrote some episodes, Kanto 55, The Great Outer Space Adventure, Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla vs. Megalon, which he co-wrote, Zone Fighter, which he co-wrote some episodes, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which he co-wrote, Submersion of Japan, Espy, The War in Space, which we have covered, and he did some episodes of the 1978 series Monkey. He also wrote Horrors of the Wolf, a Wolf Guy adaptation Toho did. The film was produced by Tomoyuki Tanaka. The film was written by Shinichi Sekizawa, who wrote Giant Monster Varan, Battle in Outer Space, The Secret of the Talesian, Mothra, King Kong vs. Godzilla, The Lost World of Sinbad, Atragon, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Dogora, Ghidorah, The Three-Headed Monster, Invasion of Astro Monster, Ultraman, Kaiju Buska. The composer, Marusu Sato, did Godzilla Raids Again, Half Human, The H-Man, Son of Godzilla, Submersion of Japan, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and The Blue Stigma. He did 8 Akira Kurosawa films with Yojimbo, Sanjiro, High and Low, Redbeard, I Live in Fear, The Lower Depths, The Hidden Fortress, and The Bad Sleep Well. Your director of effects, Sadamasa Arikawa, worked on Ultra Q, Ultraman, Kaiju Buska, Ultra 7, Son of Godzilla, Destroy All Monsters, Mighty Jack, Fight Mighty Jack, Space Amoeba, Rainbow Man, The Mighty Peking Man as an uncredited effects director, and the 1978 film The Phoenix. As for your cast, leading the cast, Akira Takarada, who played Yoshimura, was in Godzilla, Half Human, The Three Treasures, The Last War, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Invasion of Astro Monster, King Kong Escapes, Latitude Zero, Godzilla vs. Mothra, Godzilla Final Wars, and finally, The Great Buddha Arrival. Kumi Mizuno, who played Dio, was in The Three Treasures, Gorath, Matango, Frankenstein vs. Baragon, Invasion of Astro Monster, and finally Godzilla Final Wars. Akihito Hirata, who played Captain Ryu of the Red Bamboo, was in Godzilla, Rodan, The Mysterians, The H-Man, Giant Monster Varan, The Secret of the Talesian, Mothra, Gorath, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Atragon, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Ultra Q, Ultraman, The Killing Bottle, Ultra 7, Son of Godzilla, Latitude Zero, Rainbow Man, The War in Space, and Bye Bye Jupiter. Jun Takahashi, who played the Red Bamboo Base Commander, was in Gorath, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Invasion of Astro Monster, Destroy All Monsters, Atragon, High and Low, Dogora, Frankenstein vs. Baragon, The War of the Gargantuas, Akira Kurosawa's Ran, Astro Boy, the 1959 TV show, Ultra Q, and Kamen Rider. Hideo Tsunazuka, who played Nita, was in Degaro vs. Goliath, Blind Woman's Curse, and The Lost World of Sinbad. Shotaro Togen, who played Ichino, was in Space Amoeba, All Monsters Attack, Destroy All Monsters, Son of Godzilla, Ultra Q, Dogora, Fight Mighty Jack, and Battle Fever J. Toru Ibuki, who played Yuta, was in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Invasion of Astro Monster, Ultra Q, King Kong Escapes, Destroy All Monsters, and finally, Terror of Mechagodzilla. And then, as I previously mentioned, Toru Watanabe, who played Ryota, had no other credits to his name.
And with that, are we going to transition to the ranking?
Yeah, I just have to say, when we cover Godzilla or Toho movies in general, I always don't look forward to doing the main cast and crew because their list is like a mile long.
You don't need to list off every single film.
I gotta be thorough. But yes, let's do our ranking. So let's start at our least favorite so far that we've covered. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Godzilla films through 1954 up until 1966, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to start at the bottom of our list, and then we're going to make our way up to the top. So, Rex, what's at the bottom of your list?
Number 7, Godzilla Raids Again.
I agree. That's sitting at number 7 for me as well. It's just a boring movie for me.
It's a underwhelming sequel.
What's your number 6?
Following it is, at number 6, Ebirah, Horror of the Deep.
Oh, this is where our lists start to diverge. My number 6 is Mothra vs. Godzilla.
I had a funny feeling you might say that.
The movie is so boring. I just cannot get invested or interested in the movie. It is so boring.
See, I can get invested in it. It's just that the third, the end of the set. Yeah, after like the main fight.
After Mothra dies.
Yeah, the third act in that movie, I will agree, is pretty bad. But I think the rest is legitimately solid. So yeah. And then, number 5 for me, following right above Ebirah, is Mothra versus Godzilla.
Mine is Ebirah, Horror of the Deep. I mean, the movie's not great, but it's not boring into the last 10 minutes, which is better than the last 30 minutes of Mothra versus.
And then at number 4, I've got King Kong vs. Godzilla.
Same here. It's a fun satire.
Above it is 1965's Invasion of the Astro Monster.
Same here. Great space opera.
At number 2. So previously I have put Godzilla 1954 there and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster at number 1.
Oh no, your opinion changed.
After a recent rewatch of 54, I've realized, 54 is a lot better than I remember. So at number 2, it pains me, but I have to say it, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster.
Number 2 for me is Godzilla 54. God.
And the number 1 for me is 54.
Number 1 for me is Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster.
But in saying that, pretty close. Pretty close for me. I really enjoyed both of those films a lot.
Yeah. I mean, fair enough. Now, I would love to talk more on them, but I think we have covered them pretty well in our other episodes covering them. So for anybody who
recording is looking quite long.
Yeah. So for anybody who, if this is your first episode with us, thanks for watching or thanks for listening. If this is your first Godzilla episode for us, definitely go back, listen to us cover 54 all the way up to this, where we talk in, I think, pretty good detail about all the other films. I think this has been a very interesting and an eye-opening for both of us, kind of figuring out what we like about the Godzilla movies and what we don't. So definitely check those out.
I'll look at Ebirah in a new light after this watching. So
yeah, me too.
There's been some value in this.
We've also covered another Fukuda film. We covered The War in Space. So if you're a fan of Fukuda, we've talked about The War in Space as well. And we're going to continue talking about kaiju and tokusatsu. And hopefully, eventually, one day, we will have all of the Toho Kaiju Eiga covered. So, if you're ready, I think we'll transition to the next thing, which we actually have a listener comment.
Oh.
So, for anybody who is listening, you can leave us a review on Apple iTunes. Leave us a 5-star review. Tell us why. We'll read it out for everyone to hear. Or you can leave us a review on Spotify. We have 7 reviews on Spotify, all 5-star. Thank you guys. Both of them, thank you for leaving us a review. If you can, please leave us a review. We're sitting at a 3.2 on Apple iTunes, which I don't necessarily agree with. But if you guys could, help fix that, it would be greatly appreciated. But Spotify also gives you the option to respond to episodes. And we've already covered one of these. Somebody posted on a -1 episode. But we have another one from bonus episode 15, The Great War of Archimedes.
Ooh.
And this is from Sam Paradis. I hope I'm saying your name right, Sam. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. And he said,
I apologize for him.
He said, I always interpreted the film as saying that Japan needed to be reborn in order to survive. War was inevitable, but the Yamato as a symbol of imperial might, in a way, save Japan from annihilation.
It's an interesting take. I mean, I'd have to rewatch the film and kind of have that in mind and sort of think about it, which I kind of intend on thinking about doing, to be honest, thinking about maybe giving Eternal Zero and Great War of Archimedes another watch.
I will say, I remember at the end of that movie, our main character does say that he views the Yamato as a symbol for Japan. So maybe it was kind of like a Japan the battleship Yamato sank so that Japan could live.
Maybe I'd have to watch the film again with that lens to try and pick up on it, I guess.
But that's definitely an interesting take, and I do like that. So thank you, Sam, for that response. I probably should rewatch it now and think about that. See what I can take from that. And if you guys want to leave us like responses like that, we'd love to hear from you. Whether it's something we said or whatever, like feel free to.
If you think we're wrong, then feel free to call us out on when we're wrong.
Absolutely. And with that, I think we have officially reached the point where we can once again indulge ourselves in the most noblest of podcasting traditions.
Yes.
And what would that be, Rex?
Well, that would be linking ourselves, would it not?
It would be.
And with that, I shall implore you, dear listeners, to check me out. I am on YouTube at Rexino, on Twitter at Rex_Xenomorph, and on Instagram, Rex_Xeno. And if you want to check out some of my writing, go take a look at the Tokusatsu Network.
As for me, hello, I'm Elijah, and I have a Kaiju and Tokusatsu problem.
Yes.
Joking aside, I am part of the rotating hosts for Monsters with Attitude. You can check us out on YouTube, where we do monthly live streams talking about kaiju entertainment. You can also head over to Facebook and join our Facebook group. It's a great place to talk with like-minded people. I'm also a writer. I've written for GodzillaMovies.com and Kaiju Ramen Magazine. Currently, I write for Kaiju United. My most recent article is about Takashi Yamazaki in Godzilla -1, a great foundation for understanding the context of Yamazaki and what he was doing with this film. My writing has also been featured in the book Giant Bug Cinema, a Monster Kid's Guide from Bear Manor Media, where I wrote about Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. I'm also a filmmaker and a YouTuber. You can check out my stuff on my YouTube channel, ET13 Productions, where you can find some of my short films and my older YouTube videos, along with a playlist that features all of my appearances on YouTube. I do plan on getting new videos on there soon, so definitely check that out and wait for that. I also appeared in a kaiju movie, a little-known film called Zillafoot from 2021. I made a brief cameo in the film as Skywatcher number 2. It's got a rating of 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb, so if you want to watch more kaiju, you can buy the Blu-ray on srscinema.com or the DVD from any major online retailer, or just watch it for free on Tubi with ads or on Prime. You can also check out my action figure photography on Instagram at ET13_productions and my ex, the artist formerly known as Twitter, thanks Danny, at the same handle. So definitely check out all of that. But as for the podcast, don't forget to write us on iTunes. That boosts our ratings and helps us get recommended to more people just like you. If you don't have an Apple device, which I don't blame you, I don't actually, that's a lie. I'm using a MacBook to do this podcast right now. You can rate us on Spotify, however. If you want to stay up to date with all things Kaiju Conversation related, follow us on Twitter at KAIJU_CONVERS. If you don't have a Twitter, you can follow us on Instagram or like us on Facebook. If you're like me before podcasting and you don't have any social media, lucky you. You can email us at kaijuconversation@gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word, you know the drill. And as always, we'll read your reviews on air for everyone to hear. We also have a Teespring store. Eventually, we'll have original artwork on there, but until then, you can sport our awesome logo on a t-shirt or maybe even a coffee mug. If you'd like to chat with us, check out our Discord server full of others that have similar interests to you. Recently, we had a discussion in our General 1 chat about the recent edition of Ultraman 2 Gigabash and how now Ultraman and Godzilla can officially fight each other. So, it's a great community full of great people. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you can be notified anytime we upload a video. We sometimes post exclusives to the channel, like bloopers for episodes or minisodes talking about news or other subjects. We also have an interview with Mechagodzilla designer Jared Kerchevsky on the channel. I definitely butchered his name. I'm so sorry. And a huge thanks to Rex for editing all of these episodes and all the other content we upload. His links can be found in the description below. Along with Rex, we'd like to give a huge thanks and shout out to Danny DeManna of the Godzilla Novelization Project for his amazing vocals on our theme song. You can support him by following him on Twitter at Danzilla93_GNP or visit his website, GodzillaNovelizationProject.com. And a huge thanks to Grattan Conwell from the podcast Giant Monster BS for composing the music for our theme song. You can support him by following the podcast on Twitter at Giant Monster BS, or on any podcast platform under the name Giant Monster BS. And with that, we're going to wrap things up here. So thank you guys so much for listening. It was great to cover another Godzilla movie. Don't fret, though. The next one is a lot closer than you may think. And as always, please remember, life's too short to not talk big. Bye, guys.
Bye.
We are set, we are in debt. There's nothing to sweat. Life's too short now, baby. Kaiju. Not too big now, baby. Conversation. His name's Elijah, baby. And also Rex now, baby. We love those kaiju, baby. And you will too now.